Hello everyone and welcome back to the Nerd Den here once again, and it feels good to be back. I haven't uploaded in a couple of days, but today we're going to be looking at Russell T Davies apparently defending the Omega redesign. So we're going to have a look at that. I'm sure it's going to be very enlightening, especially after the whole event surrounding the reality war and how that's been perceived in the fandom. I feel like at this point we can just laugh. You know, it's probably the best way to do it. I mean, you know, there's a lot of bizarre choices that have been made in Doctor Who recently, but, you know, let's just have a laugh, whatever. I feel like that's the only thing we can do at this point, but, yeah, with all that being said, let's get into the video and let's talk about what's going on in the Whoniverse. So, yeah, with all that being said, let's get into the video. Okay, so Doctor Who boss defends Omega changes after fan backlash and justifies the re-intervention. Right. So, Russell T Davies outlines the considerations that went into the surprising reappearance, and there we get the reminders of that design. Yeah. Great. Okay, so, Doctor Who showrunner Russell T Davies has defended changes made to classic villain Omega in the season 15 finale, The Reality War, giving his reasoning behind the major reinvention. So, Omega is obviously known as one of the earliest Time Lords and is credited for inventing their signature space technology, which allows them to traverse both time and space. He was believed to have sacrificed his life in pursuit of his revolutionary accomplishment, but in reality, Omega was transported to an antimatter universe where he gained enormous power at the expense of his physical form. All of that remained of him was the suit in which he was stranded, which became the iconic look that fans expected to see again when his belated return was teased at the end of Wishworld. However, yeah, viewers were quite surprised, including myself, and kind of divided. I mean, I don't like the design personally. I think even though I didn't like what they did with Sutek, I prefer Sutek's redesign. I don't think it's a bad redesign, even though I wish we also saw like a recreation of the original alongside that, and the new one was like his ultimate form or something, his god form. So there's a bit of variation. I prefer that compared to what we got with Omega by a long shot. But yeah, he is like an enormous skeletal beast. He was swiftly destroyed. Like, not minutes. Was it like even a minute? It happened so quickly. So apparently this happened in the latest issue of the Doctor Who magazine, which I haven't even bothered getting, I'll be completely honest. Russell T Davies argued that adding another man in a big cloak to the episode, which seemed slightly mad, when two other Time Lords were already on the loose. I mean, okay. I wouldn't say so. I think there's enough to, especially if written correctly, there's enough there to make them stand out and seem different. So obviously we had Archie Punjabi and Anita Dobson playing two incarnations of the Rani. So Omega came to look so different in the Reality War because Davies cited how the legend of the Gallifreyan baddie would have grown during his decades in exile, which goes some way to accounting for this transformation. So Omega becomes the legend, so that is the point of the Wish World and the point of the Universe, actually. It's a continuing thing across the entire two series that wishes and hopes come true. The screenwriter went on to say that the franchise continuity changes over the past 4 decades, as well as in-universe reappraisals over eons, also played a role in turning Omega from a robed mask of mystery, who, that awesome design there, to a rampaging colossal beast. So apparently we have to accept that 40 years have passed, the Time War came along, and everyone's history got changed. I mean, I can see that to a point, but I also feel like completely rechanging Omega's design to that extent. I mean, if he had like a new suit or something, or he slowly became a creature, I would have probably, again with that whole Sutek idea that I mentioned earlier, where I would have liked seen something like that with Sutek, I wouldn't have minded that, because obviously it would have tied into the whole themes of God and that obsession of wanting to become a god, which is kind of like what Omega wanted. That's completely fine. But he was also destroyed. Like, 2 or 3 minutes into his reappearance. Like, what is that about? So, yeah, that's what Omega is now. You can reinvent it. Well, I hope somebody reinvents it again and turns it back on its head. That's generally how I feel, because the fact that he was defeated like that, my issue personally isn't the redesign, even though I do think it looks a bit naff. The fact he was defeated practically straight away, which is stupid. So yeah, there's plenty of fuss made about Winston Churchill being in Doctor Who, when there's plenty of history to suggest he wasn't such a good guy, and that's always the way. So, and then he goes on about talking about our history of slavery, our way of walking through the world is constantly reanalyzed. So I like to think it's the same on Gallifrey. Omega has been recontextualized, and the story gets bolder and changes over time. We don't want to repeat the past. We want it to push forward. And then Billy Piper as the Doctor. That's kind of fitting. But yeah, apparently they don't want to go over the past. So that's the reason why Russell T Davies, he decided to change up what is happening in the Whoniverse by bringing in a redesigned Omega, which does feel like, even in the brief a few minutes that he was there, that it seemed like a completely different character. It could have been bloody Rassilon, it could have been the other, it could have been literally anyone who wasn't like that in Whoniverse history, and just turn them into that monster. That's generally how baffling that is, but yeah. Interesting interview. Well, there we go. That is Russell T Davies defending his redesign for Omega. Now, obviously, this was probably sent to the Doctor Who magazine shortly before the reality war had aired, so I don't think he's had time to see any fan criticism, which I'm sure there's a fair bit to various forms. Obviously, I've said my thoughts on it, and there's countless of people that have said theirs online as well, whether they defended it or gone against it or whatever. But yeah, very interesting nonetheless, and I just really do hope that in the far future that Doctor Who decides to go back in its history and brings back Omega, which, I'll be honest, I don't want to see any villains come back anymore, even though, okay, I would make the exception for the Daleks, well, like the big three, Daleks, Cybermen, and the Master. I just feel like there's that temptation to change things. Even with those three, I feel like at the moment there's not much respect to the source material and what made those villains so cool in the first place. Obviously, yes, you can reinvent the wheel, but that doesn't mean completely changing and throwing away every single core component, because that's what's happening in Doctor Who at the moment, which is such a shame. It really is. But with all that being said, thank you so much for tuning into today's video. If you are new around here, please click that like button and subscribe for more nerdy content, and I'll see you all next time. Thank you very much for tuning in as always, and goodbye for now.